you grow up? And you're pretty old now, so we might as well get how old you are too, and we'll start with that.
All right, my name's Dustin. Prefer Bones, but last name is Croach. I was born in Calgary, and I'm 38.
All right.
Ode, O-D-E.
Let's ask you some questions about how you got started in tattooing. But before that, what are your? I know you have a really interesting story about how you got like kind of struck by tattoos. What were your earliest memories of tattoos?
My mom's second husband actually got a tattoo at the Dutchman's, and I was fortunate enough to watch a good portion of it done. It was a dragon on his forearm, and that was it. I wanted to go to the peony and stick on tattoos because she wouldn't let me get the real one. Since I was 11, every day. Mom, I want tattoos.
What stick-on tattoos did you get?
Panther.
Panther? Nice. Badass old panther.
Used to get the same panther all the time.
Did you draw one yourself?
No.
No?
No.
Always the stick-on?
Just drew ninjas at that age.
It's just, oh, fuck. So, obviously, you always wanted to be a tattooer. You're always into tattooing. At least that's the story you always told me.
Yeah. Since then, I was hooked.
How'd you get started? Like, where'd you start tattooing? Where'd you apprentice under somebody? Did you?
Yep. Yeah, I started in Kelowna.
Kelowna, where's that?
Kelowna, BC, Canada.
Right.
And yeah, his name was Bob Graverson. He was actually Paul Jeffrey's first apprentice, and just approached him, and it was old school biker apprenticeship right from the get-go.
Nice. Did he treat you like shit every day? Did he
Oh, yeah.
you and beat you?
Yeah, it was good.
Nice.
Got pinned down by bikers, and yeah, got told to change his truck oil and stuff like that.
Right.
It was awesome stuff.
How long ago was that?
Oh, 18 years ago, 19 years ago.
Okay. You remember the year? 19 years ago. I could probably do the math myself.
95, I think. I don't know. I told you I'm getting old.
93, if we do our math right.
Yeah.
So Bob, you served like a old school apprenticeship.
Yep.
Was it like how long before you were tattooing?
Was a little under a year, but it was an old school apprenticeship. Like, had floor to wall flash and just like ceiling, flash, and it was all hand painted. And he gave me a pencil and a machine on the end, and I had to trace both sets of all the walls without taking the flash off the walls. And
How long did it take you?
2.5 months.
What else did he teach you in the apprenticeship? Like you say, it was old school. Was it? Did he teach you like anything about machines or making needles? Or?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had to make all his needles for a year straight every day. I guess the basics, like assembling, deassembling machines, cutting springs, everything good you should learn how to know.
Okay.
Actually did one acetate stencil tattoo,
Nice.
which was not so fun. But yeah, I feel like he wasn't relatively known, but he gave me a solid core apprenticeship, and he was a pretty funny character.
Now, I know you've recently apprenticed somebody. Do you see a big difference now between how people are apprenticed now and how when you were coming up, what an apprentice was like?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, for sure. I think it was a lot harder back then, but at the same time, I think a lot of the younger kids have a lot more to offer. They're a little bit more educated, and a lot of them, at least the good ones I've seen, a lot of them are so involved in it already, whereas for me it was a mystery, and it was just like, wow, this is tattoos, this is cool,
Okay.
That could come from the information age, computer and stuff. A little more accessible.
Did you give your apprentice an old school apprenticeship or?
As much as possible.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
You teach them how to make needles and
I did.
machine stuff?
Yep. Yeah, whatever I couldn't fundamentally teach them that I thought, I know machines and I understand machines, but it's not my forte. I don't enjoy it. I tried to take them and visit friends and other peers that could help them and spend time with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important.
Did you find that, you've been tattooing a long time now, it's almost 20 years, do you find with everything you taught your apprentice that it reinforced things you already knew, or did you learn more through the experience? Was it
Both.
both? Yeah.
Both, yeah. Definitely eye-opening. I think getting older and learning a certain way and then having someone new and fresh, they're eager about different things and you definitely learn lots, although it reaffirmed things I forgot too.
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's put that on hold for a minute because I want to get back to kind of like when you started. I remember hearing all these stories, not just from you, but from other people about you did a lot of traveling, and not like some guys like myself are just kind of back and forth across Canada nonstop. You've done a lot of stuff in Europe. Where have you traveled over there? Who did you work with? And what was your desire to go there?
My desire was just to travel and to meet people. Back then, the only thing you could see from the European scene was through magazines, and I just wanted to go meet people. And I think traveling was a little different. Like back then, it was like I had to work in a street shop and sling flash, but it was more so that I could go meet people like Philip and Luke Atkinson and Rob Koss and stuff like that. And it was really, I just had the desire to see and learn and see culture.
That must have had a big impact on your tattooing. I mean, from so early in your career.
Yeah, it was mind blowing for sure. Opened my eyes to like a different world that really only select people I think in Canada were doing at that time.
Any of those guys that you met have anything in particular striking about their work? Like Philip, obviously everyone talks about Philip, but you're talking about guys like Luke and Rob Koss, and you don't hear those names every day or see them in magazines, but I know they had a big influence on you. Anything in particular? Or?
Oh man, everything. They were incredibly strong tattooers and drawers. They were hell of hosts, like really good people and great sense of humor. And they taught me as much as tattooing is what we do, we need to belong and have fun too, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff.
I know
I got goosebumps.
Me and you've always had fun working together. Is that you find that's a really important part of probably one of the better parts of tattooing? Is that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we get to come to work, get along with people that we like and have fun and have good laughs. And, as much as we try and put tons and tons of effort into it, it can still be super fun.
Where do you like to travel to now? I know you're still traveling, so where are you going?
On a vacation? I don't know. I'd like to do some European conventions, but I really enjoy going to Montreal.
Yeah.
Montreal's great. Yeah.
What is it about Montreal?
Just the culture and city and the friends I've made in tattooing.
Yeah.
I think for me now it's more about traveling to friends' shops and getting to be with them and keep inspired and watching what they're doing, and it's fun.
You've built some really strong relationships in the tattoo community, especially in Canada. Do you see the community in Canada as being really tight? Or I know we always hear about the States and guys hating on each other and battling and stuff like that, but do you notice a difference up here?
I don't know. I haven't traveled too much to the States, so I can't really comment too much on that. I think there is a tight-knit community in Canada, but I first noticed it in Europe the most. Like everyone was real friendly with each other and pushing each other, and I think that's spread over. I think it maybe spread over to the people that really love tattooing and are trying hard for it, maintaining the integrity and, pushing each other, having fun.
How important do you think that community is?
For me, it's been really important. Kind of like stayed on it from the inside and outside at both times for different reasons, but I couldn't do what I do without the good people in it, good friends.
What do you mean staying on the inside and the outside?
I'm a shy guy. I like to kind of do what I do and just work hard, and the good people that have come around me, they've really made a good impact, and those people are really tight with me. We have a lot of fun.
All right, let's see what I can do next. How important is the idea of mentorship to you? You've had some great ones, and now you are one.
That's funny because I don't really look at myself like one, but I think it's really important. I really miss having that around for me. I think that's the importance of traveling, see peers and stuff. When I worked with the Dutchman, he was such an amazing teacher, and it was lessons every day. I could learn from him and pick his brain, and it's really important. But I've learned mentorship in the business from different people in different aspects, I think, Paul taught me a lot about the business aspect and, about being a solid tattooer and having leaps and bounds there that I wouldn't have never made without working for him.
No, you you'd worked in Kelowna, you'd started, you worked on your own for a little while after your apprenticeship, is that right?
Yeah.
And then you went to Calgary
Yeah.
to work with Paul Jeffries at
Yeah.
Smiling Buddha. How
Yeah.
long were you there for, and what was that like?
It was good. The situation in Kelowna was kind of not my first choice. It just kind of happened back then. I was kind of left there to do my own thing, and I constantly craved for more. And it took me a long time to get in with Paul. He let me do some guest spots, but it was pretty amazing. It was like the first real shop that I could see big work on hand, and you know, pounding flash all day long was really good for my technique, and it was a good camaraderie too. We'd always have good shop dinners and go hang out. And
He's pretty old school and must have been quite the experience working. I mean, the guy's got a reputation all over the world. That must have been just amazing.
oh, it was, but he's a super humble guy too.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was like old school. This is it. It was like, you know, good laughs and good jokes, and it was a lot different than my apprenticeship. And learning so much, you know, all the time. It was just always eye-opening. I mean, he was one of the best ever. So
And from there, you went to, where'd you go next?
came back to Kelowna for a little bit and finally managed to get a job at the Dutchman's, which he's always, I mean, that's where I seen my first tattoo done. So
That's
it's always been a goal to work there.
How was that? I mean, John's got a totally different way of working and running a shop than most tattooers. He's kind of the phantom, right?
Yeah. Well, and that was good too. Like I worked there twice had to leave once for family reasons. And the first time it was a little bit crazier because it was a smaller shop and John was gone quite a bit. But the second time it was amazing, and the crew we had there, everyone was pushing each other and laughing, and it was, every day was just eager to get to work. Like I've been tattooing about 10 years and it felt like going back to like the first 2 years where tattooing was like candy. You just needed more, you know?
That must have been a great experience. The crew you're talking about was epic for like by Canadian standards. I mean, most people aren't going to know most of the tattooers that come out of Canada, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
guys like Rob Hope and
Yeah.
Jesse Young and who else worked there? Clint Danroth.
Ryan Halter. Clint was on the way out. I actually replaced him. I had worked with him before, which was awesome. But yeah, Jesse Young, Jesse Dicey, talented artist. The guest artists we had in there were amazing too, like Dave Cummings, Maurizio from Brazil, Junior from Brazil, just some of my all-time favorites, and they just all came and tattooed. It was great.
Yeah. When you went there obviously to get mentorship from John. Do you feel like that relationship between tattooers is still valid as it was, you know, even when you started almost 20 years ago? Is that important in our industry? You think that young people really need a mentor in order to grow?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think it's just like a mentor, one mentor, you know? And when I worked at the Dutchman's, everyone there kind of had something to bring to the table. And I mean, sometimes tattooing can get you frustrated and it's stressful. And, you know, sometimes someone's been tattooing a little longer and they say, oh, you got to go through this wave and it'll get better again. It's like, it's not just a mentorship in art or tattooing. It's like sometimes you just need it as you grow in a stressful career that you're never going to leave because you love it.
Yeah. Now, it's funny you mention that kind of stuff because we talk about this all the time, the parallels between tattooing and life. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. You know, a lot of us start out young in the industry and are ignorant fucks and need to grow up. And tattooing is a pretty rough career to prove yourself in and to grow up in. You learn your lessons pretty hard. Is that true with you? Like, you started when you were just a kid, like,
Yeah.
To come up through it. Do you see those parallels?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I really knew what tattooing was about till 10 years in, you know, and I think the mentorship after 10 years, I realized it was more mentorship after that, but it was also more important. And then it wasn't till then that I realized what it was that I craved it more. I think I craved it indirectly in different ways just because I wanted to achieve goals. But after that, it was like, oh, you learned who was solid and you learned who was like still pushing things and having fun, and you know, that's attractive to things. And I think tattooing is like, I've always referred to it as like hockey, like it's a full contact sport. There's no stopping. You know, you got to get up and you got to work hard and practice and train. And I mean, hopefully our careers last a lot longer than a professional sports player. So
Hopefully.
yeah.
What's the best thing about tattooing?
Oh man. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. Everything. It's given me everything. It's given me good friends. It's educated me about culture, about history, about art. It's opened my mind to the world. It's made me less ignorant. It's turned me into a foodie. I couldn't. The great people that it's brought me, the struggles and triumphs have been equally as big, and that feeling when you still triumph on something is like, and then you see how much further you got to go. It just keeps you hungry, keeps you having fun, I guess.
What do you think the hardest thing to overcome in tattooing is? What's the biggest hurdle? Personal or professional?
That's a good question. Personally, for me, it's about finding balance, spending time with my wife for the other things I want to do, and not getting burned out on tattooing because I'm a bit of a workaholic. And the other things I want to do, like more art and stuff like that. So personally, that's a challenge. Professionally, it brings all walks of life to this industry, and you know, not everybody's good, but like when you meet the gems, they're amazing.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of that, biggest influences. Who in tattooing, who your biggest influences be? I mean, I think the obvious ones are
Influences overall or influences now?
both. I mean, Maurizio's been a theme throughout your entire career. Maybe you want to give him special mention because most people probably don't know who Maurizio is.
Yeah, Maurizio Teodoro for sure. He's from Brazil, Black Dragon tattoos. He's unbelievable. John the Dutchman. Really like Maurizio's old apprentice Junior. He's amazing too. I guess those are probably the biggest influences that have been consistent for style, approach to the way they lay it out on the body, uniqueness. But that kind of goes back to the whole West Coast kind of greaseball style. So there's been the greats that have influenced me too, like Dave Shore and Paul Jeffries and Brian Zuck.
The legends,
Yeah.
Canadian tattooing.
Yeah, yeah.
Speak about the West Coast greaseball style. You know, I never hear that term. In all my travels, I never hear it, and the only people seem to know about it are some guys on the West Coast. But how would you describe that? Because it is a style.
A strong, dynamic tattoo industry that's a little bit greasy. Doesn't always have to be super clean, but it's dynamic and it ages incredibly well. You know, little bit of Americana, but not too much. More Japanese, but that slight feel to it, and it kind of goes down the coast, all through Brazil.
Nice. So you kind
For
of
me,
kind of like Japanese stuff in with that, like a West Coast take on it. Like everything else West Coast has kind of got that
Yeah.
over the top style. And,
small fusions.
yeah, small fusions.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Now you've moved around a lot. You know, like myself, you're a bit of a gypsy. Have a reputation as being a bit of a gypsy.
I've stayed put now for a long time.
Yeah. I know you have a really beautiful shop here, and I know it's kind of what you've been wanting for a long time, a street shop that's open and it's got a good vibe to it. But I know you always toy with the idea of a private studio. But what are the not maybe not the pros and cons, but how do you know, when you're established like you are, it's obvious that you might want something a little bit more private. How do you weigh what's the choice there? Like,
I think the times I want a private studio is more when I'm starting to get burnt out. It's when, as I think sometimes you're trying to give people what they want all the time, and trying to do everything on top of tattooing is a big feat at times. And I think that's when I get feeling like I want to do something more private. But then other times I really like being around other tattooers. And when I'm not burnt out, it's like they bring so much around and just what they're getting into. And, you know, like working with Benny, he's got a whole fresh outtake on things. And it's like, there's every day he shows me something I've never seen before. And it's like, oh, it inspires you creatively, you know?
yeah. Totally.
So,
Is it hard to stay that open when you've been tattooing for 19 years? Is it hard to be open to new stuff, and not just fall back on your bag of tricks and just do the same shit all the time? Like, is there that temptation just to be lazy, and maybe not lazy, but you've developed all this stuff and you just, well, I'll just work off of that?
I guess it's not a temptation, but I think with anything as you get older, you lose energy, stuff like that. So I think that's why it is good to have like someone young around. Keeps you inspired, keeps you like wanting to push it. Whether it's for the ego I have inside of me or just sheer desire to push it and do something new and be like, wow, I'm proud of that.
Nice.
I mean, I have a long way to come in learning just drawing and art skills. It's like, if I don't keep going, I'm going to disappoint myself.
Answer some questions. Why tattooing and not just art?
It's tattooing. It's different. There's a love to it. I can't describe it. It's just, the times when I'm super burnt out and it's like the minute I'm gone from tattooing for a week, I need it back. And I don't think I'd be satisfied without tattooing.
I often wonder this. Is part of it the deadline, the external deadline from a client where you've got to produce, or if you were to be an art, like a painter, you got to be self-motivated to meet any kind of, to produce anything or finish anything. You could be the typical flaky artist and not get shit done, but with tattooing, you have to produce every day. Like,
it could be the deadline's good for me for sure. I think it comes to, as silly as it says, like sometimes we can get frustrated with our client. At the same time, when you have that client that they're just so happy and you've worked with them so long and it's been a journey for both of you and you see it come to fruition and the energy of that body comes through the tattoos and they fit and they move, it's like, it's not flat anymore and it's got a life of its own. And I don't know, the machine and the needles in the skin and the ink and just all of it,
nice.
Especially when you have a good collector or something. And like I have almost a bodysuit, it's like you relate really what they're going through and they can relate what you've gone through. So it's like there's a weird bond there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of large scale work, and you work hard.
Starting to.
You work hard to get there. Like you do as many sleeves as anyone I've ever met. But when you approach that stuff, I know you have a really flowing style. Do you see with younger kids coming up who are doing more, like the traditional stuff is great, and I know you have a strong appreciation for it, but do you find that there's a limit to how that can be transformed to a large scale, whereas like this West Coast greaseball style definitely fits the body and moves with the body? Is that something that you obviously hold in strong regard? Do you think that is being taught to the next generation of tattooers, or?
I don't know. I think that's a fine line. I think that goes back to mentorship and how they learned. Some kids that just pick up a machine off the internet, I don't think they learn that. But I think if you're exposed to it all, you'll learn that. Like, it's no different than the evolution of like Chris Trevino or Eddie Deutsch. That style went from almost like 1 point bigger, large, like 6-hour tattoos to sleeves that were very American traditional orientated, but started to have that flow and everything. So, I mean, it's in the end, it's still art. Yeah. I think the transition will always be there if kids are hungry,
Oh, that's cool. Your style.
Gong show? I don't know. It's changed so much over the years, and it depends on the project I'm given. Because I was kind of taught that you need to be well-rounded. Paul Jeffries always taught me that. In Canada, you need to be well-rounded, learn how to do as much as you can, soak it all in. So it really depends. Like, lately I've been giving subject matter that's not Japanese and it's kind of artistic. So I'm trying to look to other peers that are doing incredible things and seeing how they approach it. I like to keep it bold and flowing with detail inside the boldness and try and make it cool.
You just touched on something that's really interesting about looking to your peers for inspiration and how they approach things. There's a lot of talk in the industry right now about appropriation and flat out theft of ideas. Like, what's the fine line there? Like, you got to be able. I mean, we're pirates, right? That's what we've always been told. We gotta be able to take stuff, but Where do you draw the line? Like,
Don't copy. Influence. Definitely back when I was younger, I didn't understand that, and then you have to realize that that's someone's tattoo, and it's like, you want to do a mariachi tattoo, figure it out, do some research. We don't need 800 text pieces out there because text did it the best. I don't know. I mean, that's a tough subject because you are looking at history passed on and subject matter passed on. I mean, I know my influences of dragons. I love tattooing dragons, but I always try and make them different. If I'm impressed by someone's, take a trick they've used, but use it in my own way. Don't copy subject matter and try and change it up.
that's probably a lot harder when you're starting out than when you're a little bit more established, though. I would imagine. Like, I know when I started out, I didn't have any, I didn't have a style. I think it's hard for some people to take that stuff, but I think you're right where you don't copy, right? Like,
But that's part of tattooing and the struggle of becoming a better drawer. It's not like it's been like, oh, I picked up a pencil and could be Rob Hope. It doesn't come that easy for me. To me, it was like learning drawing lessons, figuring out how to draw, learning composition, still learning composition. And that's been the journey of 18 years.
who would you credit with giving you the most help with learning how to draw?
John the Dutchman,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
What kind of stuff?
Theory,
Like when you got to him,
lessons.
when you got to him and when you left him, what was the difference? What was the...
I had a mild understanding of some theories and stuff. Little drawing tools that can be taught in books that when I was a kid I didn't read. And he had one of the last degrees in hand illustrations, and he's an amazing teacher. The way he had a way of teaching you that for me it connected really well with simple words and movement of hand to paper. He just showed me lessons on color composition, line weights, talking about placements on canvas, achieving depth, different theories of art. That I don't oil paint, but he'd bring that to the table in tattooing and show you in examples. And I think I left there starting to scratch the surface. So.
Do you think John's influence is felt outside of Vancouver even very strongly? Like, he's touched a lot of people, I've tattooed a lot of tattooers, but he doesn't have that name in the industry. Like Ed Hardy or God, even Dave Shore or stuff like that, guys who've traveled and made a name for themselves. But John's always been held in high regard, but you never hear anything about him. Like, do you think that, like, from you working with him, do you think that's something that he specifically has wanted? Or do you think that's something the industry really needs to be like, hey, like, we need to really acknowledge what he's done?
I think it's what he wanted. He's kind of a hidden gem. It's kind of like looking at someone like Mike Roper. Really good tattooers know who he is. His stuff's hard to find, but it's all amazing. And I think that's the way he wanted it.
Yeah.
Not that I know Mike Roper, but...
This far into tattooing, you've been tattooing almost 20 years. It's a big marker coming up for you. What excites you about tattooing this far in?
Everything. Seeing the level get crazy good. I don't necessarily like the way the industry is fully going, but at the same time, there's so much new stuff being put out that's just mind-blowing, and some of the people that I think are newer, that are really dedicated, are just like, I want to see them keep on the integrity, and not for us to become like hairdressers, because it's an amazing thing. That excites me. Even just learning and being new techniques, stuff like that, watching things age, and yeah, I don't know, it's still pretty much the core to when I was 18 and getting my first tattoo. It hasn't changed that much for me.
The other side of that question, what about the industry?
Tattoo TV, how it's kind of degrading the integrity of our our lifestyles. I don't even want to call it a trade. It's like the people that I respect and looked up to, it's a lifestyle. And they have honor, and most of them have honor and history, and they know it all about tattooing. And there's a huge lineage of amazing people that had to do a lot what we've all had to do to get where we are, and they've all passed it on. And it's not just like, that sounds more like of a Western thing, but you look at it through Polynesian tattooing and how they pass on their history, and it's like, I don't want to see that get lost, and that's what drives me the most frustration, I guess. I had a conversation with Ben the other day about young people getting in the industry, and it's not so much not letting people in. I think it's how they get in and how they're going to protect it and how to nurture it along and not just expose it and make it unpure. That's the most important thing to me, on the negative side.
Who are the most underrated Canadian tattooers?
Oh man, that's a tough one. There's so many gems. And it's hard because I'm mostly on the West Coast, so there's a lot of people I don't know on the East Coast, and there's a lot of good tattooers all over now. The people I think that will comment on like Western Canada, we have the greats like Steve Moore and James Tex, and the people I've already mentioned, Rob Hope, stuff like that. Ryan Halter, Rob Noseworthy, he's amazing. It's so hard for me to say. There's so many good tattooers. There's people pushing it really hard too that I think are at that 8 or 9 year stride like yourself that are in the next 2 years are going to be really pushing it too, and it's like it's exciting.
Cool. I bring up the Canadian thing because we work in the shadow. Maybe it's a self-perceived shadow of the American tattoo scene. It's so strong, so prevalent, it's everywhere. And Canadian tattooers just seem to kind of work quietly, and do our own thing. And I don't know if that's because our industry up here wasn't very strong and diverse historically. Like, we have good guys tattooing up here, but it wasn't real widespread like in the States. What do you think it's beneficial or a hindrance working in the shadow of that?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like you said, you brought up someone like the Dutchman who's not, I guess it depends where you want to go with your career. Because I kind of look at it in Europe, there's people coming out of like Russia and Poland right now that are, et cetera, that are like, wow, amazing. And they don't have a limelight or anything, and they're just working hard and doing it, I think maybe the American thing is more of just, it's always been about publicity in America, like Hollywood, it's a huge part of their culture. And I think for Canada, I think not being as exposed, like people are developing their own styles a little more, where it's not like the tattoo trend of the month or the 6 months. And the people that are up here doing really, really crazy good stuff are all pretty unique. So I think it could be good or bad, I think it depends on how public you want to be with your reputation.
What do you think the keys are to success in this industry?
Keep your head down and work hard. Meet people that are like-minded and try and stay humble, because to me, compared to all the great masters of the world that have produced great pieces of art, I might not ever get there, so I got to keep trying.
That's right. So work ethic?
I guess, yeah. Determination, being firm but open-minded, and have fun with it. Stay in love with it. Do it for the right reasons.
Anything you want to leave off with? Anyone you want to shout out or give props to? Or
anyone rad.
Yeah.
All my friends, they know who they are.
Yeah.
The people that keep waking up and building machines for the right reasons and keep pushing art and good times, fun laughs.
one last question. What's the future for you? Where are you gonna go? What are you gonna do?
Keep tattooing. Keep tattooing.
Yeah, I just saw a really good interview with Corey Flatlow, and he's been tattooing. He just hit the 20-year mark. This interview might be a couple years old, I'm not sure, but and he was saying, I just feel like I'm just getting started. Like I feel like the next 20 years are gonna be incredible. Do you get that same feeling? Like, you know, you just kind of like hopped on board, kind of like.
I wouldn't say just hopped on board, but there's still so much I want to do and try and achieve, and yeah, people I want to hang out with, friends that are just like-minded in the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think that's. Unless there's anything you want to add, I think that's it.
No.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
And that's the only, everything else is golden.
I guess you can just start, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just talk about working at Dutchie's.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was one of the biggest things ever for me going in there, because I didn't really, I mean, I was trying hard with drawing and tattooing, and I was making certain achievements, but he was one of the last people with a illustration degree in hand illustration, and just the amount of knowledge and the way he could put words together with showing you on paper. And I mean, he still has an art teacher today. He's constantly learning about art, and he was more than willing to stop whatever he was doing and show us anything. So for me, he was probably the biggest person I've learned all my art skills from.
I hear they're working there could had a little bit of high stress level at times, just because John was very hands-on with all the artists that worked for him there. Constantly wanted to make sure they were producing at their best. Do you find that? I mean, that must be a really hard thing for any tattooer to swallow, to have someone come in and tell them their drawing sucks and they need to redraw it right then while their client's waiting. Do you find that a big learning?
Yeah, it was hard for sure. I think in my case, I really spent so long looking at his work and trying to take things and emulate certain things about his work that I didn't really look at it as crazy stressful. I found it almost more stressful going home and trying to produce it myself. And like I remember one time working on a big giant dragon, and it's one of the first bigger things I'd done, and he came along and he's like, do you want me to tell you what I think you need to do with it? I was like, yeah, of course. And I just probably spent 8 hours on this drawing, and he's like, oh, you could change that, that, and that. And it was like 3 minutes of changes, so to me that was a triumph, you know? John would have had a funny way, like here's another story. I was doing a demon spider on this guy, and my drawing had 7 legs. And I had managed to catch it on the skin, and he didn't really look at my tattoo well, and he left, and my customer left, and he's like, did you do that tattoo? I was like, yeah. And he's like, you know what was wrong with it? I was like, yeah, it had 7 legs. I added the other one to the skin. And he was just like, good, thank you. So just things like that. He had a critical eye, and those were minor things, because he's an amazing teacher.
Well, the camaraderie there was pretty incredible. I don't know if there's been another shop like that in Canada with that kind of talent and like just good-natured fun. I mean, that place was crazy for practical jokes. Like,
yeah, it was a good time.
I have a picture of you walking down the street with some gay porn tape to your back, and I've heard some stuff that was pretty tame. Like
That was a good one. Yeah, walked to the framing store, the art store, out for breakfast, all with the picture on my back. Thanks, Rob Hope and Dave Allen. Yeah, it was a good time. And you know, part of that, John would go away to the Philippines for summer, so you let the monkeys out of the cage. We're gonna play a bit.
Do you think part of that was in response to this? I mean, that was I don't want to make it sound like it was a bad place to work, because I know it wasn't, but it had a very high level of expectation, and I imagine that brings a lot of stress to work. Do you think a lot of that, like, I mean, we're talking about some crazy practical jokes. Do you think a lot of that was just blowing off steam and just being able to cope with each other? Because, I mean, that first shot was really small, the second one was bigger, but the stress was way higher, right? Like,
I think maybe a little bit, but at the same time, getting 5 weirdo artists in a room that all like to have fun added to it the most. It was never nothing was ever malicious. And there was still a lot of just good times, fun.
And everyone's still tight, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think the original, or what I considered the original crew when I got there, we're all real good friends still.
Nice.
Really lots of love and fun, good respect. It's fun to get to do conventions once in a while with one of those guys.
How important do you think that is in any studio, including like studios that you run now, having that kind of camaraderie and
Oh, it's everything. We spend so much time here. It's like living with someone, so, you know. And like you said, tattooing is stressful.
yeah.
I don't think that stress, whether it was Dutchman's or I learned the standards from there, I still try and push myself just as hard, so.
Cool.
It's always better when you're having fun.
I think that's a good way to end it right there.
Sweet.
Good job, boys.
I'm the worst nervous dude on camera.
You did great, man. Good.